Hey guys, recently I wrote this song called Without Me. It's coming out June 26th, and it's already out on my Bandcamp. Link will be in the description for those who want to listen early, but it'll be out hopefully everywhere else by June 26th. And I wanted to break it down and show some of the production behind the song to show how I went about writing and producing it. And just to get this out of the way, I'm in no way saying that this is the best way to produce a song or professional in any sense, but I hope you can still learn something. So to start off, I want to show off the drums. So we have basically 5 layers, but one of them you don't really hear. 6 if you count the riser, which I'll go over with the drums. But the first layer sounds like this. And then during the chorus, hi-hat pattern changes. And just gets some swingy 909 hi-hats. But I'm going to break down how I did these drums really quick. So we have the RX 1200, which is a emulation of the EMU SP 1200, which is an old sampler used in like 90s house music and hip hop. And on it, I just loaded some drum samples from the plugin itself, and then tweaked them around with the tune, decay, and mix. And then I threw on Kramer Pi compression. Any compression really works. I just used this one. And then I threw on a little EQ, really kind of tuning the kick a bit, and then boosting the presence for the snare and hi-hats. And then I've removed a little bit of the harshness because it is 12-bit, so there's a little bit of that 12-bit crunch that can get pretty harsh in the high end. So I just ducked that down a bit. Next up, we have the clap. This is a 909 clap that just gets layered in. Honestly, you could combine them with the same track because they have the same compressor and EQ on it, and it's the same plugin. I just added it like later, so it just was its own track. But that's the clap. It's a 909, tweaked a bit. Then we have this drum layer, which is the drums that I use for reflections, but tweaked a little bit. Now, I did another video showing how to get this drum sound, but it's changed a bit since then, and this is a different chain. But basically, it is Logic's stock drummer. If you go into the little open window on the left, the library, you'll go to drum kit, and then it's producer kits. You want any of the plus, just grab one. I think I grabbed Bluebird or Blue Ridge, one of the two. But I have my own kick. I believe this is the 60s felt kick, tuned like this, and everything on here. Toms weren't ever used, but they exist. They are all their settings, and they are the Stadium. Snares bell brass, and its tuning is just 72 cents, dampened quite a lot. dB's leaked a bit, everything's changed a bit. And then hi-hat, it's the vintage muted, these settings, crashes, and then all of them, and then the ride cymbal. And that's everything for the drums. They're pretty much all of the effects on it are pretty much stock. I didn't mess with any of each drums except for the snare. I threw a comp VCA on there on both of them. And everything else I believe is untouched. Oh, the tom and the mid tom has an SSL comp and EQ on it. But again, I didn't use toms on this track, so these are kind of pointless. The low tom I normally always don't use anyway. And then everything here with the mix. And then on this actual channel is gain to flip it because Logic drums are weird and I feel like they're flipped compared to how normal records are, so I flip it back. I throw it through Decapitator, Devil Lock, a VCA comp from Arturia, and a pitch shifter just because they just seem a little bit more natural when they're pitched down one semitone. But they're on timing of drums and normal stereo link, just down a semitone. And pretty natural sounding. Pattern's nothing crazy. It doesn't do the kick, it just layers the snares and hi-hats to give it more of a fuller feel for the higher end. So that's how it all sounds together. And then the percussion layer. Pretty much just a stock drummer. You can choose percussion for the drummer and mess around with different settings. This is just how I came up with this. And then on that channel, I have this EQ, which I believe came stock, but I tweaked it a bit. Compressor, distortion 2, which I believe also came stock on this percussion drummer, but I added a little bit of sidechain to help it mix in with the drums a little bit better. And then the last channel is the sidechain. This is just the original drum, just copied down, only the kick, and it goes to a bus with no output. This is the sidechain for everything that gets sidechained on a song. And other than that, there's a little riser, which is just a reverse 909 open hi-hat and 909 crash. And that just goes to the same drum bus. Now, all of the drums go to the same bus. The bus is really simple. It's just an EQ, tape emulation, and SSL comp. And that's how all the drums are done on this song. Similar for other songs of mine, but of course I wasn't using drum machines up until this song. Now moving on to the instruments, starting with the bass. The bass for the whole song is Logic's like thumb stroke bass. The only thing I did was I changed the EQ and just cut out like everything above 650. And then I boosted a bit of the lows. And then there's a compression that's on it. I believe this came default. And then the synth bass, which is really simple as well. This is the synth preset I used, or made. And then there is the DI amp emulation. So this is like a DI box, but it's using bass amp and Logic. You just use a DI amp or just any sort of preamp. And is this one, I just put the shape knob on 3, turned it on, then a little bit of a boost. And then it's just full direct. And no change for the dB going out. And then that goes into a compressor. These are the settings I use. I just used a vintage VCA Logic stock compressor. And then a little bit of chorus to thicken it up and make it a little bit wider. And then those layer together for the verse and the chorus. And then next up, we have the rhythm guitar. On its own, it sounds like this. Now you can hear a little bit of clicking. It was chopped up a bit. And this is it pre-chopped up for the intro section. I didn't chop it. And that's just pretty much a Dynacomp on a guitar with the, I think it's neck pickup with a little bit of the bridge mixed in. And I threw on top of it an EQ, just removing all the low end to make room for the bass and the synths, and just boosted the presence a bit, and then cut off a little bit of the extra high. Threw a little phaser on it, a little chorus and compressor. And here's the phaser. Here's the chorus. And then here's the compressor I used. It gets sent to a little bus that has reverb on it. This is the reverb settings. There's an exciter on it to brighten it up a bit. And then there is a compressor on it that sidechains. And it sidechains to the original guitar track. So basically, anytime the guitar is silent, it lets up so the reverb can play. But if the guitar is playing, it cuts away so it doesn't really muddy up that much. And the guitar is panned slightly to the right. Now moving on to the synths, we have this first synth in the left ear. It's just slightly in the left ear. It's a very simple synth patch. It's actually, I got this from the Juno Jazz preset. I think Reverb Machine made it. It's like $30, and the synth is, in itself, it's like $30 or something like that. It's cheap. So I used one of the patches, and I just modified it a bit. I believe this is a little bit different than how it comes, but that's the sound. There's this modulator on it. I don't really think it does much. It was meant to affect the pitch slightly to make it go in and out of tune. Ideally, you could just do that with the LFO, which I did a little bit. but this is just on there. I think it was from another preset. And then there's a synth in the right ear, just a little bit to the right. They're both 18, pan left and right. And this one is panned right with the guitar because the guitar is kind of bright, and the synth on the left is kind of bright. So those two kind of fill in the brightness, but the synth on the right is darker. So it fills in, makes it more full, but the brightness comes from the guitar in the right ear versus the synth. So all together they mix pretty well. And so before moving on to the like chorus instruments, I wanted to add that the bass, the synth bass, the rhythm guitar, and the clavinet all go to a second bus. Their output goes to a bus that has this phaser DDL plugin on it. This is a clone of the Ensoniq DP4, as far as I know, I believe it is, which is a multi-effects unit used a lot by Daft Punk in the 90s and early 2000s. It's all over Discovery, and it's on some of their side projects, and I think it might have been used on Homework too. But just a great sounding unit, and I wanted that kind of old like 90s French house flair with the phasing and everything on the guitar and the bass and everything to kind of make it feel more like a sampled funky record than just a pop funk record. Just give it a little bit more electronic and house inspiration in there than the drums. So I threw that on, and that goes to another bus, which I'll show in a bit. But that's just like an effects bus, and that goes to the ending instrument bus. But then going into the chorus, we have this guitar. Really simple. It just plays the chords. There's an EQ on it. It gets rid of quite a bit of the high end. I boosted the presence, but I ended up cutting a little bit from them, so it just dips up for a sec there and then goes back down. Probably wouldn't make a difference if you removed it. I just didn't mess with it. Cut a bit of these frequencies out because I didn't like how they sounded. The resonance of them just wasn't really that nice to me. And then I cut out some of the lows just to make room for the bass, so it's not really competing with anything. Then it goes to a comp VCA. These are the settings for that. And then there's a spreader on it, just making it really wide before I pan it. And that goes to the music bus, which I'll again show. Let's go into the lead. The lead sound is probably the most complex thing on this song, other than the vocals. If you notice, the E piano, this one is lead carrier. It's actually going to this lead as a vocoder. So there's vocal synth on it, and its sidechain is that channel. It's in sidechain mode, and I used TalkBox, and these are the settings for all of that. And it's like pitch, voicing, and everything. Everything's here. But that pretty much is like everything here melodically doesn't really matter because it's more just like a rhythmic thing. And this was originally just copying the melody of the vocals for the verse, but I chopped it up to get the rhythm from it. And then I threw that through a phaser, an amp simulation, and a compressor. And then there's an EQ on it that just boosts up those presence, those high end, removes a little bit off the top, and then removes a lot of the bass and a little bit of the 800 like boxy frequencies. And then that's panned to the left because it kind of goes with the clavinet, which the clavinet is in the right ear, also going to that phaser DDL bus. Got a little bit of compressor going on. I added a bit crusher to it to give it that 12-bit sampled feel, 90s house and hip-hop. Then I added an EQ, got rid of that really harsh high end, boosted the presence a bit, boosted a little bit of the boxier frequencies, and then just cut everything below that. There's beat breaker on it to give it more rhythm if you hear it without. And then with the beat breaker. And then I threw it through its own phaser. And then other than that, those are all the instruments. The instrument bus that they all go to has a basic EQ on it, just boosting a little bit of lows, a little bit of highs, cutting a little bit off. It goes to a tape emulation. SSL comp, just to kind of glue everything together. It's very subtle, very light. Sidechain compression, again, go into that sidechain channel, which was bus 32. And then a little bit of a isotope vinyl on there just to make it feel a little bit more vintagey. That's all of the instruments broken down. The only other thing extra I did was at the end of the clavinet part, I noticed there was a little bit of a weird delay trail. I don't know where that comes from, but it plays here. That like extra 2 stabs. I exported that, bounced it in place, and I chopped it up and I threw it on its own audio track that goes to the same phaser bus, and that comes in during the breakdown. But other than that, that's everything. To start the vocal section, we're going to go over the vocoders first because those are probably the most simple thing. There is 2 on this song, but they're panned hard left and hard right. We'll go over the one on the hard right first because that's the one anybody can emulate because it was using all software. But the vocoder part just repeats without me, which the audio signal getting sent to that vocoder is from the low chorus, the natural voice harmony, not the falsetto. And it sounds like this. It's panned hard right. It's just vocal synth, sidechain to that audio track. And then it's talk box, speaker all the way up, everything else pretty much off. It's using this oscillator, saws, down 12 semitones in pitch, a little bit of shape on it. There's a little bit of a vocoder mixed in, it's 50%, and then the talk box 83. These are the settings for the vocoder. And then there's a little bit of chorus on it. And then there's a clip distortion on it. A little bit of a reverb on it. An EQ. Compressor. And then ozone imager just to make it wide before panning. And then it goes to a bus that has a little bit of a tape delay on it, just doing 4th notes. It has beat breaker following it, so the vocal only delays during the parts that I want. And it acts kind of like a sidechain, but it's not triggered by anything, so I can do more freeform editing to it. The same thing goes with the vocoder on the left, except it is hardware. I use the Boss VO2 pedal. Oh, VO1, sorry. And it has the same plugins on it, and it even goes to the same bus. And so together, it sounds like this. An ending result, you can hear that vocoder on the right is more clean and smooth and lush, and the one on the left has a little bit more grit to it. Next up, we have the actual vocals. We're going to jump to the first verse. There is a verse low harmony, which sounds like this.
Think I could do this with you, my baby, but our love's run dry.
So that's pretty much just like my natural singing voice, and then layered on top of it is a really quiet falsetto.
Think I can do this with you, my baby, but our love's run dry.
And then those layer together, and the falsetto layer on top is a way quieter. Kind of just acts like a thin little bright layer on top of the vocals, and they blend really well together because of how quiet it is. Both are pretty simple. They have a noise gate on them just to get rid of some of the awkward silences. I still wanted to keep a little bit of the breathiness in there. If you listen to like Michael Jackson, you can hear when he's like gasping for breath. And so it's a very light noise gate. Next up is a de-esser. This is just tweaked to my voice, so my S's aren't as harsh. Whatever you got to do to get your S's less harsh, it's going to be different from person to person. Then I have microshift. I'm using lead vocal clarity preset, and I might have messed with the mix knob a bit. But this just kind of acts like an auto double tracker. It widens up and thickens up the vocals a bit, and it kind of just replicates like ADT that like John Lennon of the Beatles would have used. And then EQ. Just boost the presence, high end, a little bit of the higher mids, and then cut off the lows because we don't need them, and then cut off a little bit of the extra highs that are a little bit more harsh and unnecessary. And then that goes to a bus running the same thing. There's harmonies on top of it. All of the harmonies, the high harmony is panned right. There's a low harmony panned left and the mid harmony, and they all follow the notes of the chords. The only thing that's different with these channels is that they only have a noise gate and ADT on them, except for the highest harmony, which is just the falsetto layer copied down for just the harmony parts, just to kind of give that higher end harmony a little bit more brightness and just make the high end for the harmonies pop more. And this one just has microshift on it. It's the same chain, I just removed the de-esser because it wasn't necessary for the harmonies. And then during the chorus, I actually copied the same harmonies from the natural voice down to this track, which is again kind of the same thing. There's no high EQ on this. I think I just accidentally turned it off, or it doesn't matter. In the end, all blends together. And this goes to the same bus. Then for the chorus, we have the same chain. It goes to a different send though. This one has the beat breaker first, so it controls what the delay is getting to delay. So it kind of controls like exactly what the delay gets. And then here's the delay, fourth notes, higher feedback. And then I use gain just to boost it a bit because it was really quiet. All of the vocals go to the same bus, which has a de-esser on it. Just another one. This one's a lot less harsh. It's just a subtle one. Multi-presser. It's very light, very subtle, but it just kind of helps glue everything together and just give it a little bit of an extra like flair. Then we have another compressor on it. These are the settings for that. We have a little tape emulation going on. And then we have this plugin. This is the sauce. This is the secret to the vocals and why they sound the way they sound. Without this, the vocals are very quiet, a lot more dull, a lot darker, and they sit in the back. This really pushes them forward, adds a lot of brightness, and pushes them to the front of the song. And I used the PS vocal preset. I don't think I modified anything because I thought it sounded good as is. Threw on after that a little EQ just to clean up a bit. A little reverb. And then sidechain compression, which is super subtle, very light threshold on it. And that just makes the vocals kind of get glued more to the rest of the song and allows the drums to still be punchy. And so all of that together, all of those buses get sent to the master bus, which I'll show off. So we have the music effects bus with that phaser DDL plugin. And that goes to the music bus, which is just EQ, tape emulation, SSL comp, sidechain, and vinyl emulation. Then we have the vocal sends. We have the guitar send with the reverb. We have the drum bus. We have the sidechain. And then the vocal chain. And all of that gets like rerouted. So all of the vocal sends go to the vocal bus, main vocal chain. And then the music effects get sent to the music bus. But then the drums, music, and vocals all get sent to the master bus. And on the master bus is an EQ, just shaping the song how I wanted to sound it. Bass, I wanted to boost up a bit more. I wanted it to be like very prominent and funky. And then boosting up that high end just to brighten things up, give it a little bit more air. Cutting off the super lows and super highs because they're unnecessary. And then boosting up that presence a bit, as well as cutting out some of the muddier frequencies. We have this compressor, which is a huge part of the master chain. Without it, this song feels a lot more like empty. This really just makes everything feel like full and polished and clean. These are the settings for it. It's a parallel compressor, so everything's parallel compressed. It really just squashes the whole song and boosts it. And then we have two limiters on this. The first limiter boosts it to a pretty decent volume. And then it goes into this plugin, which just does like all the spatial stuff, and it helps with the bass. So the bass is very mono and in the middle. Kind of helps pan out the top higher end to be more wide. Then we have tape emulation. And then we have a limiter. And this just gives it that final bit of boost to hit the luff mark that streaming services beg for. And also just make sure it doesn't peak. And altogether, that's pretty much the whole song. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll answer everything I can. Anyway, that's about it.